So like most dance forms, belly dance is all about interpreting the music, but belly dance is very, very interpretive, and most of the moves that we have fulfill a certain job for certain parts of the music. So in belly dance, we generally think of music as having rhythm and having melody at its very most basic level. This is really what we need to think about when we first go in and start learning belly dance. So we can roughly divide the movements into melodic moves, which don't necessarily have much rhythm, moves like figures of 8 or circles, or arm movements that are fluid and melodic and can serve that type of purpose. Another set of moves that we have are more rhythmical moves that show the rhythm and the accents in the music. That's things like hip drops, or hip lifts, or hip accents, things like that. So these are two main groups, and then I like to think of another third group that we have in belly dance, and that is traditional folkloric movements. So belly dance has a very folkloric background. It comes mainly from Middle Eastern folk dancing, along with lots and lots of other sort of folk dances as well mixed in. So these days the traditional folkloric style has its own little sort of set of movements, if you like, and sometimes those are woven into more modern dances, and very often you'll see whole folkloric pieces. So that can involve things like hops and jumps and other sort of traditional moves. Now, I'm leaving those for now because the folkloric style of it, side of it rather, is probably not something that you'll get introduced to in your first class, but it's something to be aware of. As you go on and learn belly dance, you'll encounter all these little kind of niches within belly dance. But for now, I think all you really need to know is that you have some moves that are very rhythmical and accented, and you have other moves that are very soft and smooth. So let's start thinking about which type of moves you would use as a melodic move. I've already taught you some. One of them is this hip circle that you've already learned. This would fit into that category. Okay, and you've also already learned a little about doing smooth arms. That would probably fit into that category as well. Now there's another type of move that I want to teach you that fits into that melodic set, and that is a figure of 8. So there's a whole family of moves called the figure of 8s, and the one that I'll teach you today is a basic figure of 8. We also have a reverse figure of 8, and we have vertical figures of 8 with the hips coming up and down, and we have what we call a maya, which is another type of figure of 8. Those are the type of moves that you can go on and expect to learn, but for today we'll stick with a basic figure of 8. So what I want you to do is twist your right hip a little bit further forward. Now twist your left hip. So you're just twizzling your hips, but remember about the concept of isolation that we have for belly dance, and that means that your head and your shoulders stay still. So we're not twisting the whole body, just the hips. Now twist your right hip and hold it there. Now push forwards a little bit with it, and now bring it round to the back, circle it round. And now notice that your opposite hip is now facing a diagonal. So then push your left hip forwards, draw that round to the back, and let your right hip drift forwards. Make sure your knees are soft. At this point, a lot of beginner students end up with locked out legs. Soften the knees, slide the right hip forward, push it forward, pull it round to the back. Slide the left hip forward, pull it round to the back. The right hip twists and comes forward and round, left hip twists and comes forward and round. And you can just keep the hands in that neutral position and round. And this is a basic figure of 8. Okay, and now in terms of the rhythmical moves, I've already taught you a hip drop. Now there's another move that's sometimes called a hip snap. So it's a little bit like a hip drop, but instead of having your feet in this position, you can put them next to each other, the weight evenly distributed, and then if you imagine what you did for your hip drop, you pulled the hip up slightly, and then you let it drop down. We do that, but with the feet from this position, and we can alternate hips. So you can drop the right hip down, the left hip pops up slightly, then you can drop the left hip down. Then the right hip goes down, left hip down, right hip down, left hip down, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is a very snappy kind of accenting type of move. Okay. Now, a move that pretty much has a category all of its own is the shimmy. That's why I haven't included it in either the melodic or the rhythmical moves, because it sort of can overlap both of them. And the shimmy is this shaking of the tummy and of the hips. And you might think, how on earth do you do that? You might already be able to see that although it's my tummy that's wobbling and moving, it's actually my legs do a lot of the work. So if we were to slow this right down into slow motion, you would see that the knees are alternately bending and going straight, but they don't lock out straight, they just bend and straighten slightly. So when we shimmy in belly dance, all we think about is the legs, and we actually forget about the hips and the tummy, because these just do their own thing without any effort. So we have the knees working, your weight is nicely through the center of the foot, you're not leaning over the toes, and we can take it 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, bit faster, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, until your tummy can't keep up, and it's not an obvious up and down of the hips, but the overall effect is that your tummy wobbles. Now, I wouldn't expect any beginner belly dance student to be able to stand there and shimmy in their first class, or even their second or third or fourth. But what you'll find is gradually, as the weeks go by, your teacher will help you to practice, and after a while, maybe a few weeks or maybe a few months, depends how long it takes you, you'll gradually be able to sustain the shimmy. Now, what also happens when you first start to shimmy is that as you speed up, the shimmy sort of vibrates through the whole body, so you can end up with the whole body in the hands and everything shaking. As time goes on, you'll learn to refine that down into the hips and the tummy. So my advice to you is just to persevere with that, keep on practicing, and you'll soon have the hang of it.